Are you 50 years and above and recently experiencing hot flashes, extreme fatigue, unable to sleep at night, mood swings? Well, you might be going through symptoms of menopause, which is why on the Wellness Tips of BDY Express today, we'll be discussing menopause. My guest today has always been Dr. Anna Graham, who has been generous with her time to discuss or delve into the issue extensively to help women going through this difficult but unavoidable time to help stress. You can join the conversation by sending us your comments, questions, and handle on our social media handle at Media Express on Instagram and Facebook. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor, and thanks for being generous again with your time. What is menopause all about, and at what age does it really start in a woman's life?
Menopause is when the woman's natural menstrual cycles come to an end. So essentially, what happens is her reproductive cycles have ended, so she's no longer able to conceive naturally. And that tends to happen around the age of 51 naturally for a woman, but any time between the age of 45 and 55 is classed as normal. So when a woman stops this time, she can no longer conceive a baby naturally. Now, we can only diagnose it in retrospect, so that means looking back. So we have to have 1 year of no menstrual periods before we can diagnose the menopause. So we look back and diagnose it. There's other times when you can have the menopause, and that's when we would remove the ovaries. So if the ovaries had cancer in them, for example, then we would remove the ovaries, and then that also causes menopause. But natural menopause occurs around the age of 51 years old. So usually when there may be the odd story of that happening, it would be very, very, very unusual, and usually it's because of fertility treatment. So it wouldn't be natural conception. It would usually require donor eggs, and it would usually, you could still carry the baby, but it wouldn't be necessarily with your own egg. Yeah, so all women will go through this stage, and it's a natural process, but it can be troublesome for some women. So we tend to group the symptoms into 4 different categories. So we think of physical symptoms, and they're mostly hot flushes, night sweats, joint aches, body pain, dry skin, dry hair. And then we think of the psychological symptoms. So women often report a lot of anxiety and a lot of problems with mood swings and with a loss of confidence and with brain fog. So difficulty remembering things, finding their words. And then we think about genitourinary symptoms. So we're thinking about vaginal dryness, urinary tract infections, increased frequency of needing to go to the toilet for a wee. And then we think about sexual symptoms. And when we're thinking about sexual symptoms, we're thinking about a reduction in libido, so no desire to want to have sex. And then we also think about pain when having sex, and that's due to the vaginal dryness and the other changes that we've described. The whole reason we get the menopausal symptoms, so the menopausal symptoms or the perimenopausal symptoms, so the perimenopause is that time between having the regular cycles when you start to go through the change but before your periods have stopped. And during that phase, our hormones are all over the place. So what we've had when we are having regular periods is we have a regular cycle and we have regular ups and downs of our progesterone and our estrogen. When we go through into the perimenopause, those hormones go all over the place, and that's why we can have a lot of the emotional symptoms when we're in the perimenopause. And then when we go into the menopause, we have very low estrogen and very low progesterone. And the symptoms that I've described in those 4 categories are caused by that low estrogen. So when we have a reduction in this estrogen, that's what causes the hot flushes, the night sweats, the mood changes, and the genital symptoms, and then the low libido as well. So it's all kind of related to that estrogen, the low estrogen. From perhaps we would say a woman has her normal menstrual cycles usually until around the age of 40, and they would be, if we were taking a typical woman, they would be bleeding for around 5 days every 28 days. And the first changes that a woman might see when she hits the age of 40 or around that time are that her cycles become shorter. So it could go from 28 days down to 24 days, and her periods may also get heavier during that time. And she may get an increase of her premenstrual syndrome type symptoms. So things like feeling very moody just before you're getting your period, feeling very anxious during that time. And all of those symptoms seem to be heightened in that perimenopausal time. And then from 45 onwards, you may start to miss the odd period. So you would sometimes go a longer stretch. And it's in that time when we can start to feel usually the hot flushes and night sweats up to that age or to around the age 50. So often the psychological symptoms start first. Then we have the physical symptoms, and then later on we can get the genital symptoms, because sometimes the genital symptoms can take up to 10 years after the menopause to develop, because it's that long-term reduction in estrogen that we have. The estrogen, as well as the symptoms that I've described, the estrogen is really important for your bone health. So your bones stay strong due to the estrogen. So when we have a reduction in that estrogen, we can lead to osteoporosis, which is where the bones become thin, and you can be prone to having fractures, so breaks of the bones. Particularly serious is the breaks of the hip bone, because that can have long-term effects on the woman. Other thing is with the heart. So the estrogen is protective of the heart, and so we know that when you have a reduction in that estrogen, you could be more prone to cardiovascular disease. And there are other things that are being studied at the moment, so about brain health and how it affects that. So watch this space kind of for how things will progress and what we know more about estrogen later on. Sure. So what we always try and do is think about the woman as a whole. So we don't just think about this one specific thing. So we want to take a really great history from that woman and find out what's going on in her life. And because obviously when a woman's in her 40s to 50s, she's usually in the peak of her career. She's usually got caring responsibilities for children, but also caring responsibilities for maybe elderly parents, and being all of these things kind of combined, and then on top of that getting menopausal symptoms. So your metabolism tends to slow down, so you tend to put on weight, so your mood as well is affected by all these things. So we would say first thing to do is to try and eat healthy, keep your weight in a healthy range, and regularly exercise. Make sure that you're being very social with your friends and trying to minimize your stress levels. And all of those things we know also impact on mental health. So doing exercise, eating healthy, and keeping your weight healthy also impact on your mental health. So we would say they're the first kind of things to do. Then if a woman wanted to, then she could try menopause hormone replacement therapy, or menopause hormone treatment, which we call. And that's by taking the hormones, estrogen and progesterone,